All right, Shabbat Shalom again, everyone. Everyone looks like they got a little bit to eat today. Just a little. Oneg is so good here. I'm so blessed by everyone's participation in that and your culinary genius. Thank you for bringing all that. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start rolling into the Q&A section of today, and again, everyone here I think has already been introduced to Dr. Rabbi Michael Schiffman. Is it Michael? Dr. Michael? Dr. Rabbi? Rabbi Dr. Rabbi, there we go, Rabbi Dr. Thank you. And I learned something today. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and allow Rabbi Dr. Michael Schiffman to answer your questions. Going to have Elder Bruce going through as a roving reporter with a microphone. One, so we can all hear you, and then also we're going to live stream the event. We are live streaming the event for posterity's sake and for reference later. But anyway, it again gives me a great pleasure to welcome to our Bema area Rabbi Dr. Michael Schiffman. Please, warm welcome, folks. There you go, you're live.
You can ask anything you want, and I'm going to answer anything I want. So I have nothing prepared for this. I have no agenda. So if you have questions, this is your chance.
Check the mic.
Check.
Is he coming through on that again?
Yeah, I'm on there. Check.
Okay, all right.
Can I ask silly, annoying questions? Okay. Well, how do you feel about Paul? Because being part Jewish, I always felt that he created a lot of divisions. And
The question was, how do I feel about Paul?
yeah, about what he said. And don't you think that even though he meant well, he was a cause of divisions between the Jews and Christians and Gentiles?
No, there's a whole body of scholarly literature called the New View of Paul. And they understand that Paul was Jewish, a rabbi, and an educated Jew of his time. He was a student of the group of rabbis who were called Tanaim. Gamaliel was one of them. Gamaliel's in the Talmud. Chances are, if Paul had not followed Yeshua, he would have been in the Talmud too. But here's the thing. The problem isn't so much what Paul said. The problem is how people understood it and how people interpreted it. You know, it's like how many times you hear people talk about the Bible and you can't understand how they could possibly get what they think it means out of it. You know, people are very good at, it's like catching a football and running in all different directions. They don't understand what it actually says. I don't think what Paul actually said was really a problem. I think the way people understood it was a problem. Like, for example, in Romans, Paul says, not all Israel are Israel. And the church always means it's not the Jews, it's us, who are the real Israel. That's a wrong way of understanding it. Why? Because it flies in the face of everything God says in the Bible. And if I have to choose between Paul and the rest of the Bible, I'm choosing the rest of the Bible. But the thing is, I don't believe that's what Paul meant. He said, not all of Israel is Israel, only the remnant within. And I don't, you know, the thing is, the rabbis of the Talmud tell us that in the time of the Exodus, there were a lot of Jews who didn't go. They stayed in Egypt. Not everybody left. And when Paul talks about the Jews, he's not talking as one who's outside, but inside. The problem was you had people who interpreted it from a non-Jewish perspective with a proclivity to say that it's not the Jewish people. It's us. And that was the beginning of replacement theology. And I've had people take my words, seriously, I have people take my words and they'll do something I'm totally against, but they'll say, but Michael Schiffman said this. So what do you want, a note from your mother? I mean, but people will do that. They'll take your words and twist them for what they want. And I think that's what happened with Paul, and it's fit 20 centuries of Christian theology that mostly has been anti-Jewish, and so they misunderstood it. In fact, the very order of the epistles, that the way they appear in the New Testament, the order of it leads you towards a particular theology. They're not chronological. They just ordered them that way. If they ordered it a different way, you might come up with some different understandings and conclusions. So I don't have so much a problem with Paul. I think Paul was frustrated. He was frustrated by the Gentiles he was reaching. He was frustrated by the Jewish people he was reaching. When he said circumcision doesn't matter, what was he talking about there, in Galatians especially? I've heard Gentiles tell me, well, Jewish believers shouldn't have circumcision for their kids anymore because Paul said they shouldn't. Well, that's not what Paul was saying. It fits neatly into their theology, but that's not what Paul was saying. If you look at the context of the time of Paul, Galatia was a Roman colony, and everybody was required to make a sacrifice to the emperor, throw some incense to the emperor. And the Jews were exempt because they had an exemption because they were only allowed to worship God, the Jewish God. So the Galatian believers were Gentile God-fearers, and they were worshiping in the synagogues along with the Jewish people, because in that time there weren't churches around. And so a lot of them worshiped in the synagogues right along with Jewish people. And then when they had this persecution, they were told they had to sacrifice to the emperor because they weren't Jews. So they approached the Jewish world, the Jewish leaders, and said, would you cover us so we don't have to do that either? Now, the Jews were operating with complete integrity and said, if you want this, then earn it, then convert to Judaism. And the way to say it quickly was to say circumcision, because who else got circumcised? So they were saying, if you want this covering, then be circumcised. Get it honestly. Don't lie. And so I think they were very right and fair to say that. However, Paul wrote and said, no, that's not the reason a person converts. If you convert, it should be because you believe this. If you convert, it's because you want to be a Jew, not because you're trying to get out of paying a tax to the government, or not because you want to get out of sacrificing to the emperor. So Paul was saying circumcision will be of no value to you if you're not doing it for the right reason. But that's not how he's been interpreted. So the problem is not Paul. The problem are the people who read it and don't understand it. Does that help? More than two sets. Everybody who thinks has their own set of rules. And they don't realize that I'm the one who has the right ones. Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Do you mind talking a little bit more about your background, how you came to know Yeshua, and if in your own family, was that a difficulty for you?
Oh, that's a simple one. I don't discuss my family, I'm sorry. Okay.
Any other questions? You guys are confusing me. We'll start with Daniel.
I may have,
Well, if you're going to be that forceful about it.
What's that? Is that better? Is that better? Okay, okay. I may have missed something, but on your Avera website, I read the whole thing, and nowhere's on it that I noticed was Jesus mentioned. And I'm sure that's for a specific reason. Could you explain that?
Sure. Chevra is not simply just for the Messianic community. As I said earlier, we cooperate with the Jewish community. And we're not going to splash Yeshua over all the pages of it. If you look and see what we're doing, like I said, you see the hands of Yeshua. But, and the Jewish community knows who we are. But frankly, they would not work with us if we're like Yeshua everywhere. It's just, and the reason for that is because of the bad things done by people who claim to be Yeshua followers and weren't. Or maybe they were, but they were just behaving badly. So we don't say Yeshua everywhere. That's not the point of it. The point is strictly feeding hungry people, feeding Jewish people. However, when we distribute food to people, we told our workers, we don't want you, pushing literature on people, and we don't want you spreading that. However, usually the people come up to them and say, "Who are you, and why are you doing this?" And they say, "Well, we have a Bible study. Won't you come?" And a lot of people encounter Yeshua there. So it's for those who are drawn and want to. But we're working with a lot of different people. And so to put that up front, it's very good for Christians. But for Jews, it doesn't work out real well. And who are the people we're trying to reach out to? So that's why we don't make it as, it's not overt, it's subtle. And sometimes you communicate better through subtlety than you do through in your face. So that's the idea behind it. We do. We've sent between 25 and 50,000 people that we've helped over the years. That was starting in the late 80s, early 90s. In fact, if you remember, they used to have this thing called the Exodus boat. We didn't do the boat, but we had buses, and we got people to the boats. So we did a lot of that. We cooperate. The thing is, you have to realize, when you do ministry like this, it is good to cooperate with other ministries doing similar work, because you can accomplish more by cooperating than not cooperating. Like I said, I called Jonathan Bernis, "Would you like to be part of this?" It's called cooperation. It's not about saying Chevra's the best thing and the only ones out there. You shouldn't support anybody but us. There are a lot of good works, and you cooperate together, and you can accomplish a lot more together by cooperation. It becomes a problem when you get people who show up who don't do anything for the ministry, but they take pictures of what we're doing and they raise money for themselves on it, taking away from money that we could use for the work. That's not so good. But overall, you accomplish a lot more. Trying to think of a way to put it with cooperation. Well, I'll think of it later. All the good thoughts usually come to me afterwards. But just leave it to say that cooperating, you can do a lot of good. I remember it. It's a quote by Ronald Reagan. But if you don't like Reagan, I think Truman said it too. It's basically this: there is no limit to the amount of good you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. So we don't put our name on everything we do. We don't need to. We're just glad that we have the opportunity to do it and accomplish it. So I don't need to put our name on everything. People figure out who we are. Like, I'll give you an example. During the war, When the war started, Chabad, the Lubavitch, there were two rabbis, one in Odessa, one in Kiev, and they were running orphanages for Jewish boys. And they had something like 250 Jewish children. And I got a call before anything hit the news. I got a call saying they need some money to get 250 Jewish orphans out of Ukraine and into Israel. I said, what do they need? They said they still need $10,000. So I called up our treasurer. Do we have $10,000? Yes, send it. So we sent it, and they got a message. Rabbi Schiffman is sending $10,000 through Chevra. And so we sent it to them, and I didn't hear another thing. But about 4 days later, I was watching the news, and on the news it said, 2 Hasidic rabbis on Shabbat got 250 Jewish boys out of Ukraine, and they made it to Bulgaria and then to Israel. And I looked at that and I said, we did that. Our name was nowhere, and it didn't need to be. Our mark was there. And I think that's what's most important. You get to do the good stuff. Who cares about the name on it? You know, the people who know us know. But the rest, you know, we're not here for our glory. Anyway, you have another question?
No, the point is that someone who knows.
Yeah. That's the only one that matters. And all I want to do is when I stand before God someday, I don't want to hear, you really messed up. I want to hear, it's good to have you back. It's good to see you. You know, you did good. That's all I want to hear. I'm still waiting. Oh, I'm willing to wait a little longer. But okay.
Amen. Bert?
Were you writing a book on the Shulchan Aruch?
On what?
On the Shulchan Aruch?
The Shulchan Aruch. Me writing a book? No. However, I'm part of an organization that has done a lot of work with the materials, and we've come up with our own application of it. It's called the Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council. You can look it up, MJR. It's, the website is ourrabbis.org. And you can find, it'll say standards of observance. That's our halacha. Okay.
Very good.
There was a question in the back.
Yeah, who was next? Don't quite know how to phrase this. Maybe, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
This is about baptism or mikvah in Messianic. How should we participate or not participate in such a thing, and how should we go about it?
Okay. I could say how I think it should be done, but there are a bunch of other leaders who think they know how it should be done. They don't realize how wrong they are. So I'll tell you what I think should be. It comes from a Jewish practice called tevilah. Tevilah means immersion. Mikveh is the place of immersion, the tank, or tub, or whatever. It's a cleansing ritual. It's a purity ritual, and it's from what John the Baptist was doing, and what later, the Christian church adapted as baptism. Baptism is the Greek word. Baptizo is for immersion, even though they have different forms. Someone asked me about the Trinity earlier. I said the problem wasn't what it said, but what it didn't. It's the same with baptism. You do baptism, it doesn't look Jewish. It doesn't look Jewish at all. It's a Christian rite. And there are different ways you can do it. There's the, back, they lean you back in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Or there's another one you go forward. It's called the forward flip triple dip. And And then there are other ways. They sprinkle. They do different things. My understanding, if I was going to, they usually say, do you confess Jesus as Lord? And if yes, then they baptize you. I wouldn't do it that way. That's very Christian, which Christian isn't bad. It's not a dirty word. It's just not me. I would probably, what I would do is I would ask the person several questions. First question, do you believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Yes. Do you believe the Jewish people are God's people? Yes. Do you believe Yeshua is the Messiah? Yes. Then we immerse you in the name of the God of Israel and his Messiah, Yeshua. And that's it. That's what I would do. Other people might think differently. But that's it. Does that answer your question? Who can do it? If you're familiar with the Jewish practice of Tevilah, I used to go every week to a mikveh before Shabbat. Nobody officiates for you. You pretty much dip yourself. I don't think you need to have somebody officiating. If you want to, fine. But when we've had conversions, people immerse themselves. You don't do like the Baptist thing where you got the guy standing there and he's wearing a T-shirt, and it's more of a private thing. You do it yourself, and some people like that. Some people don't like that. It's not for me to say what they do. God meets you where you are, and he knows what was meaningful to you, and I think people should go with that. I don't officiate at a lot of things. The things I mostly officiate at are called a Pidyon Haben, which is the redemption of the firstborn. I officiate at those services because I'm a Kohen. I officiate at weddings, bar mitzvahs, things like that. But as far as the others go, other people can do that. I can barely stand up. How can I do some of this stuff? So.
Check the sound on that, Tim. A little bit more? A little more? Okay.
I was just curious because I heard that you had been studying with a Hasidic rabbi.
Yeah, I'm not making it out.
Sorry. As you have been studying under... Hello? Yep. Okay, sorry. As you've been studying with a Hasidic rabbi, and my question is more towards what your viewpoint is in people of the Messianic faith. We don't really necessarily have a Beit Din. We don't really have a lot of halakhic kind of leadership in a lot of places where we're at. What is your viewpoint as far as Messianics who kind of want to veer more towards keeping more of an orthodox lifestyle? Is there a place for that? Is there not a place for that? Do we just all kind of try to figure it out on our own? Or I'm just kind of curious to know what your perspective is on
All right. There's a place for almost everything somewhere. My personal feeling is, I was talking earlier, I wouldn't call myself Orthodox. I would call myself Flexodox. And because I'm flexible with things. I lived for 12 years in a very religious community. I liked it. I was never unhappy with it. I liked the lifestyle. I liked the ease of being able to keep kosher. And I used to go around wearing black and white because that was the community I was in. If you notice, I'm not wearing black and white. I'm more into blue now. But the thing is, when I go to Messianic congregations, I'm speaking just as me, and I see people dressed up like they're Hasidim, I find it highly offensive, and I'll tell you why. Do you know black people, any black people? How do they feel about a minstrel show? white people dressing up as blacks? Do they feel good about it? No, because it's like a joke. And when Jewish people see non-Jews dressing up like Hasidim, it's also like a minstrel show. And so it's offensive. Jewish people are not all that insular, except for Hasidim, which are a very small minority. And they're not always thrilled with Hasidim dressing that way, but they certainly don't want to see Gentiles mimicking them to do it. And it doesn't make you a better Yeshua follower if you dress up like a Hasid. And even worse, if people dress like that, they don't live like that. I used to dress that way, like if I go to a Hasidic wedding, which I used to go to them all the time because I was with my teacher. I go to all Hasidic functions. I had a great time. I had the long black coat, I had the fur hat, I had the works. And my teacher said, Michael, you look beautiful. But he said, you can't go around that way all the time. I said, I wouldn't. And I said, but why not? He said, because you don't live that life. I had, every year on Christmas Day, we do what almost all Jewish people do. We go out for Chinese food. And my parents were alive then, and I invited them to come with us. We went with a Messianic congregation. And the leader of that congregation was wearing tzitzit and a black yarmulke, which would identify him as an Orthodox Jew. But we were in, Chang's Chinese restaurant where they had big pieces of roast pork, which my father loved. And it didn't matter because he knew what was right with it. However, because of the halacha, my father was exempt from all mitzvot because he was deaf. Deaf people are exempt. Seriously, because if you're deaf, you can't learn, because people learn from hearing. So, but he was watching this guy walk in. My father never dressed up like an Orthodox Jew ever. He didn't like to draw attention to himself. So he didn't even learn sign language. He was a lip reader. So I never learned sign language, except for the dirty ones that you learn in New York. But I don't use those unless I'm really inspired. But hopefully that won't happen. The thing is, my dad saw this guy looking like an Orthodox Jew in a Chinese restaurant where he should not be at all. He could say, oh, well, I'm only eating the chicken in it. It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to be there. You're not supposed, because you don't know what that chicken was cooked next to or what was on the stove before that. So he goes, what's with that guy doing? And I said to my father, because he's a schmuck, And my father just went, yeah. In other words, it communicated the wrong thing. So I don't think it's a good idea for people who are not Jewish to dress up as Orthodox Jews who are not going to live that life. And if they do choose to live the life, they're not supposed to be judging other people with it. When people come up and they go, oh, well, you have to keep kosher, you have to do all this. I grew up in a hippie time. I'm kind of a rebel anyway. I'm an old hippie. But here's the thing. When my wife and I were engaged, the week before the wedding, the Messianic Congregation we were part of threw a bridal shower for my wife. And the guys were standing around. We weren't going to sit there. No way I would sit for that. So I said to the guys, why don't we go out to a steakhouse? It's a very guy thing, red meat, So we went out to Longhorn Steakhouse. But I asked all the guys there. This one guy, Frank, who was someone I loved dearly as a person, but at the time, he just came up I said, you want to go with us to the steakhouse? And he was like, oh, on Shabbat? You're going to go on Shabbat and spend money and handle money? And I wanted that steak. So what I said to him was, Frank, let's be really honest. I could eat a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur in the middle of your sanctuary, and I'd still be more Jewish than you'll ever be. In other words, I don't have to prove anything. I don't eat ham sandwiches, of course not. But I'm just saying, I don't need to prove anything. And I don't like seeing Gentiles dressing up in a Jewish minstrel show thing, and I don't like when they are trying to be more religious than God. You know, it's like if you follow the Torah, it's supposed to be to make you a better version of yourself. It's not for you to go around telling everybody else what they're doing wrong. That is not the Torah. If you want to show love to people, you gently show them love. But you don't go around judging them. And so, you know, I love when people try to judge me because I give it to them. I will not accept that. You know, because I'm old and I'm cranky and I don't have to put up with it. But I've waited my whole life for this. So I hope that answers your question. And if any of you like to dress up that way, watch out. No, just that's up to you. Uh-huh.
I just wanted to add to what you
Hold on.
said.
Let's try this mic.
Okay. How do you find the line then? You're talking about like not dressing up in the costume, so to speak. Where does that, how do you find that line? If you're not Jewish, but you respect Jewish culture, you want to learn as much as you can, but don't want to adopt something that's not yours to take.
There's something, I appreciate that. That's a very good question. So the answer is, for me, there are certain things that are identity markers for Jewish people. And for those, you should keep hands off. But there are other things that are fine. I don't mind other people playing with my toys as long as they treat them with proper respect. In other words, if you're going to wear tzitzit, there's nothing forbidden for you to wear tzitzit. But if you're going to wear them, don't tie them to your belt loops because that's not the way it's done. You basically wear a four-cornered garment. You wear it under your clothes. And the way I was brought up, you don't even show the tzitzit out in public. It's for you. It's a sign for you, and you don't wear them out. And people say, but it's a sign. Well, so is circumcision. You don't wear that out. So the thing is, if you're going to do it the way Jewish people do it. Wear them the right way. Don't, even if you wear them out, just put them on a four-cornered garment, because otherwise you're not fulfilling it. It says you shall put them on the four corners of your garment. And if you're, I was at a conference once, but there was a lady there who, I was sitting next to another woman who was a Holocaust survivor, because I had a table to talk. This woman was sitting there, and she had a bright purple tallis. Now, that's common now, but it never was before. Bright purple, and she had gold tzitzis. Nobody has gold. That's not, I've seen things on the internet where they have Gentiles who've done tzitzis, and they've made it like macrame. And they put little stones and, crystals with it. They try to dress it up, but that's not what's in Scripture, and that's not how Jews do it. And so this lady came up with gold tzitzis on her purple tallis, and she was swinging them around like in a burlesque show. And she saw us staring, and she came up to us, and she said, "The Lord told me to wear this." And I just looked at her and said, "Maybe he was trying to punish you." So she walked away. Okay, yeah, I have that streak, and I have to sometimes repent, and I probably will later. But the thing is, if you're going to do something that is a Jewish practice, do it right. Do it respectfully. Don't take it and make it into something else. One thing I can't stand is I go to conferences, and you have all these Gentiles they buy shofars, the biggest ones, and they use every opportunity to blow the shofar. And you know what Jewish practice is? You only blow the shofar in the month of Elul, which is the month preceding the high holidays, and you blow it on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and in between. Other than that, you never blow the shofar, ever. But I see Messianic congregations where every Saturday morning they're blowing the shofar. I went to a funeral for a Messianic leader's child. It was the saddest thing. And they had at the service, they were more from the charismatic end of the movement. They had 4 people come up with big shofars, and they stood at the 4 corners of the coffin, blowing the shofar to try to raise him from the dead. Guess what? It didn't work. And it wasn't because I was disapproving. God doesn't really take that part of me into consideration. He does what he wants. But the thing is, it was a misuse. And if I wasn't a believer and I saw that, I would say, what are they doing? It was not a positive thing. It wasn't a testimony. It was a misuse. It would be like if I took a cross and said, oh, it's a great back scratcher. You know, it's not what it's for, in the best sense of it. So if you're going to use any Jewish implement or Jewish tradition, use it the way it's supposed to be used. Otherwise, it's a very bad testimony. And people feel like you're misusing it. And that's actually painful to watch. You know, if you're going to wear, the worst case of that, a number of years ago, it was on the internet. It was a big scandal. There's a guy named, I'll say it was on the internet, his name was Ralph Messer, who is not Messianic. He is a Hebrew roots, two-house person. So he kind of makes up his own rules. He's not even Jewish. But he took a Torah, and there was some black pastor of a big church who had fallen from grace, shall we say, committed, some sins, and he needed to be purified. So he had Ralph Messer come with a Torah, and he wrapped him in the Torah. And he made us some stupid lie, saying this Torah was found on the railroad tracks leading to Auschwitz. I've studied the Holocaust in detail. I've been to almost every concentration camp in Europe. And let me tell you, there was no Torah sitting on this. The Nazis used to collect them and put them in a warehouse. They were going to have a museum to an extinct people. So all those implements, well, they weren't just left there. It just wouldn't have happened. But then taking a Torah scroll and wrapping somebody in it who is an adulterer, and then praying over it. First of all, the whole Messianic community was repulsed by it. And the Jewish community spoke out strongly against it. And what was worse than all of that, the Jewish community said, that's what Messianic Jews do with Torahs. It's not what we do with Torahs. But they used it for their own purpose in their own way. It was no more than a prop. And things that we use for worship are not props, because that devoids of any meaning. And it's a disrespectful thing. So I know this is a very long answer to your very short question, but the answer is, if you're going to use anything of ours, at least be respectful enough to use it the way it's used in the Jewish community, so it doesn't look bad. Okay. Other question?
Go on, Kurt. It's okay. You're next.
Oops, sorry.
Hi, I am Gustavo. The question is, today you watch everybody in here, and you saw the service. Do we have room to improve, or we had to take something that is not belong?
I thought this service fell right out of heaven. It was absolutely perfect. Now, you know something? I don't come to a service to judge it, because I'm a teacher. I give it grades, and that's not worship. The reason I don't attend the local Messianic congregations is because I would grade them. And I don't feel it's right for me to leave a worship service feeling, they didn't do it right, or I couldn't believe what that guy said. I'm not there to judge. I am not the judge of all the earth. I'm there to worship God. And to me, what makes a service good, did I meet God there? Because I should have a sense of him. And if I don't, you'll hear from me about that. But the rest of it, it's not my purview. I'm not supposed to be judging it, and I'm not there to judge it. I'm here to take money from you to feed hungry Jews. That's what I'll judge it by. So don't be cheap. But the thing is, I worship God this morning, and I can't ask for anything more than that. So it's not how right you're doing it. But there weren't anything in it that was done so wrong that it put me on edge, because I'd definitely be talking to you about it later. No, I wouldn't embarrass you in public. But no, you didn't do anything wrong. It was fine. Okay.
Kurt, you had another question?
On the Mishnah, there's like several authors that have written some books on it. Is there a particular one you would recommend?
At the first word,
On the
what?
Mishkan, is that what you were saying?
Mishnah.
Mishnah, excuse me.
On the Mishnah? Most of them are, like what kind of books? Like interpretation or just simply translation? Or
Well, I was interested in studying it more, and there's like several authors and two that were more modern, if you will. I was just wondering if there was a particular author that you would recommend.
if you want, probably one of the best generalized one would be Jacob Neusner's on the Mishnah.
Okay.
But avoid people who really haven't studied it, but they write about it. There are a lot of, no, really, they'll say, oh, well, you don't really need to study this, because these were ungodly rabbis who didn't accept Yeshua. And, what means is it's much easier to criticize something you haven't studied. I teach a lot of those people, and then they learn. But the thing is, I hear people say, oh, you shouldn't study the Talmud, you have to have a special anointing for it. Really? What's that special anointing? And why would God give you a special anointing that he didn't give to everybody else? If you want to learn something and you want to study, fine. I teach a course in the Talmud every Sunday afternoon. And I have students who come in by Zoom, and we take it and we relate it to our own spiritual experience. And believe it or not, it fits really well. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's more of what's in the eyes of the beholder. And just because somebody criticizes it, to me it just says, you really didn't know it, did you? Because I said, I studied for 12 years with a Hasidic rabbi, and he made it come alive for me. And he made it good. I'll give you an example. In the beginning of the tractate called Bava Metzia, by the way, the Talmud is the Mishnah and the Gemara, the commentary on the Mishnah. In the beginning of Bava Metzia, it talks about having a cloth. And at what point is there ownership of the cloth? Is it yours when you hold it in your hand? Is it yours when you see it? Is it yours when you hear about it? At what point is it yours? And there's a whole long circular discussion about it. And when you study it, they talk about 10 other things that you learn about in the process. So the thing you're talking about isn't what you're supposed to learn about. But they do ask, at what point is it yours? And how would that be relevant? What cloth do you think about? Well, my teacher said, yeah, you know what the cloth is? It's a talit. At what point do you own it? When you wear it? When you hold it? When you see it? Well, what does that have to do with anything? If this principle is ownership, yes? So how does that apply to you? You're driving to the shopping mall and you see a parking spot. At what point is it yours? When you pull into it or when you see it? And if someone pulls in before you, you go, they took my spot. So what constitutes ownership? So as an example, that's it. It can be very appropriate to us if you know how to apply it. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Very good. And what was the name of that author again that you mentioned?
Michael Schiffman. No, Jacob Neusner.
Very good.
He's written a lot.
Anyone else?
Several of my friends and family have funerals on the Sabbath, on the Shabbat. And what's your opinion about traveling or attending on the Shabbat?
On Shabbat? Well, my father died on a Friday afternoon, but we didn't have the funeral until Sunday. He also died on the Friday afternoon before Passover started. So it was also a double whammy because of the holiday. So I'm very sensitive to the question. We don't bury on Shabbat because of the work of digging a grave. But you're supposed to bury as soon as possible if you can. That's mainly because in the desert, bodies break down, it's before refrigeration. But usually you can wait a few days, to get family to, families are more spread out for them to come in. And it's usually considered just a very human response. You want people who want to come in to be there. But the laws of mourning in Judaism are very specific, and they're very good because they've been developed for the purpose of comforting the family. So, for example, when a person dies, they'll have 24 hours where someone will sit with the body all night, make sure they're really dead. But they also wash the body. It's called tahara, which is to cleanse, to wash, clean, and they will cleanse the body. There's a special group called the Chevra Kadisha, the Holy Assembly, and they take care of that for the community. You don't embalm, and we wouldn't do it on a Saturday. And usually if you do it on a Sunday, that way it gives people a chance to travel and come if they want to come to the funeral. When my mother died, it was during COVID, so everything was by Zoom. We only had 7 actual people there, but there were like 100 people on Zoom. So times are different, things are changing, but yeah, we don't do it on Shabbat. Now, if a person's not Jewish and they want to do it on Shabbat, then it's fine, because Shabbat is only binding, covenantally binding on Jewish people. If Gentiles wish to do Shabbat, they're certainly welcome to, but it's not a covenant obligation in the same way. It's like circumcision. If you're not Jewish and you don't circumcise your children, not a problem. If you are Jewish, in the Bible, there is no such thing as an uncircumcised Jewish male. It just doesn't happen. And so if you're Jewish, you should be circumcised, or at least be circumcising your children as well. So if Gentiles get circumcised, fine, no problem. Nobody's checking. But the thing is, you don't want to, it's required for one but not the other. There are a lot of things in the Bible that don't apply to everybody. For example, in the Bible, the king of Israel was required once in his lifetime to write a Torah scroll. Anybody else could write it, but they weren't required to, but the king was. Now, I said I'm a Kohen. That means I can't go near a dead body. So I don't go to funerals unless it's my own family. The first funeral I went to was my grandmother's. And I went to my grandparents' and then my parents' funerals. Those are the only ones I've been to. There were too many at that. But, if you died, I can't go to your funeral, no offense. But I'm forbidden by Scripture. If someone else goes, it's fine. If I go, it's a sin. Because God said Kohens do not go. And the question becomes, for what will I make myself unclean by going to a funeral? Unclean is not the same as sin. It's just a state of ritual impurity. So that only applies to me as a Kohen and to other Kohens. So circumcision, while anyone can do it and it's fine, is only obligated to Jews. And there are other commandments that are obligated, like Shabbat. Shabbat says it is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. This is a covenant sign between God and the children of Israel to keep the Shabbat. If other people keep the Shabbat, that's fine. Why? Because he who does a mitzvah is like, follows the commandments or does a good thing. He who performs a mitzvah does a good thing. A mitzvah is good. If you're not Jewish and you do a mitzvah, it's good. It's fine. If you're not Jewish and you want to keep kosher, it's fine. If you don't want to keep kosher, you don't have to. I got news for you. There are Jewish people that don't keep kosher either. They're still Jewish, but they don't keep kosher. So my dad, for example. But I loved when he used to tell me to go to Walmart and buy him, to the deli, and buy him a pound of sliced ham. And I had just moved my parents into my house. My mother got really upset. How can you ask him? He's a rabbi to buy ham. He goes, he's my son, he'll buy it. So he goes, he shouldn't bring it into the house. He goes, it's coming into my kitchen, not his. So I went and I bought my father a pound of ham. So before I gave it to him, I thought I'd have some fun. I said, you know what I had to go through to get this ham for you? And he said, what? I said, I had to put on a fedora, sunglasses, a trench coat. I said, give me a pound of ham. I said, they gave it to me, and then they said, anything else, Rabbi Schiffman? My father almost fell off his chair laughing. So the thing is, we do that stuff. We don't take everything seriously. You take God seriously. You don't take yourself that seriously. Don't take other people that seriously. That's why I'm Flexodox. But I could buy ham for my father because I was honoring my father. But I don't know if I answered your question or just danced around it. I was trying to answer it.
I guess part two to it would be, I think you answered it, but me as a Gentile attending someone's funeral on a Shabbat is acceptable then?
Like I said, well, I would say this.
Not the funeral would be like not.
Yeah.
It would be someone that's not a Messianic or Jewish.
If a Gentile does not follow the Torah, he's not in sin. I would define, well, it depends on what commandments. If, there's some that are applied to, there was some that applied just to the king of Israel, some that applied just to the Kohanes, to the priesthood. There are some that apply only to men. There's some that apply only to women. And then there are some for all Israel, and then there are some that are universal for all people. Guess what? Thou shalt not murder. That's for everybody, not just for the Jews. No one's allowed to murder and get away with it. But kosher, that's not for everybody necessarily. If you want to, you'll have a very delicious meal because kosher is good. But if people don't want to, it's not a problem. If I'm sitting with people who are not eating kosher, that's fine. I'll sit and eat with them. I'm not going to eat what I don't want to eat, but I'll let them do it. And I'm not going to judge them. The one commandment really comes from Yeshua is, thou shalt not judge. Judge not, lest you be judged. God didn't give us faith so we could judge other people, but people do it all the time. And one of the things I learned to love saying to people when they get judgmental, I don't care what you think. I really don't. I don't care about your opinion. You want to keep that opinion? Fine. Get out of my face. I got enough problems. And I'm not there to offend people either. I just don't want them trying to make me what they want me to be. There's no commandment for that. But if you want to follow the Torah, by all means. If you don't want to follow the Torah, God still loves you. Don't worry about it. The things that are for everybody, the 10 Commandments, at least the 10 Commandments, they're more than just that. But at least the 10 Commandments, follow them, because that's what God revealed that he wants us to do or not do. Adultery, he doesn't want that. Stealing, He's not really in favor of that. He will not smile upon you for stealing. Even if you steal a Torah, believe it, it's not a religious act. It's theft. So it's not what you steal, it's the fact that you did it. God wants us to be the best version of ourselves, and that's the whole point of it. And that's what I try to be. If this is the best Michael Schiffman you could imagine, if I didn't follow, it'd be terrible. But God has mercy for all of us. And where you don't match up with it, well, you got your friend trying to judge you with it. Remember, God doesn't judge you for it. It's like, there's a story in the Talmud. There was a man who is a king, and the king had a son, and they had a fight. And the son left, and he was away for 100 days, and he became ill. And his friend said to him, "Call to your father." And so he did. He said, "I want to come home." And the father said, "Come." And he said, "I can't come all the way," because in his journeys, his life took certain turns. He said, "I can't come all the way." And the father said, "Come as far as you can, and I'll meet you the rest of the way." That's what God is for us. He knows where you are. He knows what you're involved in. All those dirty little secrets that we all have. But yet he loves us. And really what he wants is for us to come home. And all we really want, whether we admit it or not, is that we want to come home to him. And he'll meet us the rest of the way. And so there's no judgment in that. It's just the love of a father for his children. I was telling some of the guys that God has spoken to me a few times in my life. Not all the time. I don't have like a running conversation. Usually I do, but it's me talking. But when I started ministry, just before I did, it's going to be my first week in ministry, God spoke to me. And what he said was, "These are my children. Have mercy on them just as I have had on you." And that has been the bedrock of all my preaching and all my teaching. I have to have mercy on you because you're God's children and he loves you. And I know that because he loves me and I'm his child. So I have to show the same so you might know that God really loves you and God really cares about you. And all he really wants you to do is come home. Yeah. Get the microphone. You have to realize I'm a little hard of hearing, so I need amplification.
I'm a little slow of walking. It's more of a waddle.
This is about identity crisis, I think. I found out as a young adult that my ancestors are Jewish. They converted to Christianity and assimilated into the Western culture, and I feel very drawn to my Jewish roots, the Jewish roots of my ancestors and also the Jewish roots of my faith. I don't know what to consider myself, and I think there's a couple others here with the same problem.
Well, our group, the Messianic Jewish Rabbinic Council that developed that halakha, we dealt with that issue of who is a Jew and what. So I would ask, first of all, how far back does it go? In other words, not where it started, but who was the last person in your family who was Jewish? Was it a grandparent or a great-grandparent?
One side of the family is the 1500s, and I don't know, the others are in history books that they were Hebrews, but I'm not sure what the dates would be on those.
Well, it's not dates, and it's not what I'm talking about. In other words,
generations.
Was your mother Jewish? Was your grandmother Jewish? Was your great-grandmother Jewish?
They were
Who was the last
assimilated.
one who said they were Jewish, who identified as Jewish? Who?
Moshe Hershey in the 1500s.
That was the last one?
Well, on that side of the family, yes.
So after the 1500s, they never considered themselves Jewish?
I don't know.
Okay,
Probably not.
here's the guide we go by. If you, according to Jewish practice, Jewish halacha, if your mother was Jewish, you're Jewish. So my son, I have one son by adoption. I'm married to his mother. His mother is Jewish because her mother was Jewish. Her father was not. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, a German Seventh-day Adventist, and he was a great guy. But so that made her, if you're going to count it that way, 50%. Halakhically, it doesn't question she's Jewish because her mother was Jewish. If the father's Jewish, they're not considered Jewish. So you ask on which side of the family was it, father or mother? If it was the father, some have said that, well, if the father was Jewish, the mother was not, we would consider the children Jewish if the children were raised Jewish. If they weren't raised Jewish, no. So, but it usually has to be like one grandparent at least. So my son is Jewish halakhically. He has one Jewish grandparent, his grandmother. But, and he's also being raised, and he was adopted by me, which, But if he marries someone who is Jewish, his kids will be Jewish. If he marries someone who's not Jewish, the kids are not going to be Jewish. I have a nephew in that situation. He married a Catholic girl. The Catholic girl died, but they had a baby, and the baby is not Jewish. He is, but his baby isn't. And that's okay. I mean, still love the kid, still my niece, my grandniece. But the thing is, we're talking halacha, Jewish law, what's Jewish. So the way we would say it in the Messianic world would be, at least in the MJRC, Messianic Jewish Rabbinical Council, if you don't have one Jewish grandparent, and it's further back than that, like a great-grandparent or a great-great-grandparent, or somebody got a transfusion from a guy named Goldberg, and now he thinks he's Jewish because he has Jewish blood, Forget the transfusion one; they're not Jewish. But because blood is blood. But if you have a remote ancestor further back than a grandparent, what we would say is you are a non-Jew of Jewish ancestry, and that doesn't just come from us. If you were trying to immigrate to Israel, that's what they use as well. They would you guys are involved in Tikkun. You know Dan Juster. Dan Juster immigrated to Israel. Dan's a good friend of mine, so this is not going to be a slam. It's a good thing. Dan immigrated to Israel as a Messianic Jew. He was allowed to. And most Messianics are not allowed to. But the reason was because his father was Jewish and not his mother, which meant, according to Jewish law, Dan is not Jewish. He is Jewish because we recognize patrilineal descent from the father as well. But for Israel's purpose, for the Jewish community's purpose, he is a non-Jew of Jewish ancestry. So they accepted him in as a non-Jew. And he'd be, on the identity papers, it would say he's, American or whatever, but they wouldn't say he was Jewish. For, Israeli. They'd say Israeli, but not Jewish. On my identity papers, it says I'm Jewish, because my parents were Jewish, my grandparents, and everybody else. So the thing is, my nephew wants to immigrate to Israel. And so he can go in as a Jew because his mother's Jewish. His father's Irish. And his daughter is not Jewish, as I mentioned. So I said, if you immigrate, you can go in as a Jew, but your daughter will come in as a non-Jew of Jewish ancestry. I said, are you okay with that? He says, yeah. So, okay. It's not my rules, but they're the ones the community decided. So in our communities, there was a time when people would say, oh, I found I had a Jewish ancestor. When? from 1812 or something, no, or like from the 4th century. They found somebody, one person, like they knew it. You know, if you're like 10 generations back, you know how much of that DNA is Jewish, of all your DNA, you know, as it cuts and cuts each generation? Very little, a trace. So how much do you have to be Jewish? When we would talk about this in Ukraine, we had a lot of time, it's actually Moldova. We had a lot of time on our hands with that when we were helping with people. And they go, well, how do you know who's Jewish or not? And they'd say, well, this one has, you know, a Jewish parent or a grandparent. Or I said, look, if you take a cup of coffee, I'm a coffee drinker. If you take a cup of coffee and you put a few drops of water in it, is it still a cup of coffee? Yes. If I take a cup of coffee and run it under the faucet for about 30 seconds, is it still a cup of coffee? No, there's coffee in the cup, but it's not a cup of coffee. Does that make sense? Jewishness works similarly.
Well, both sides of my family were Jewish at one time.
Can you document it?
Yes.
That's good, because if you want to immigrate to Israel, if you want to sit here, it's perfectly fine. But if you want to immigrate to Israel, they want proof. When I went to get my Israeli citizenship, the first thing they said was, prove you're Jewish. Here's my mother's marriage contract. Here's my grandmother's marriage contract. Here are the Jewish cemeteries they're all buried in. You know, here's my bar mitzvah certificate. Here's my Brit certificate, my bris certificate. I had proof all the way up. So they said, come back next month. It's like going for a driver's license. You know, it's like bureaucracy. But if you're going, you have to play by the rules. I mean, in religious circles, we tend to like make our own. We really can't go that way. And if we're dealing with the real world, we have to go by what's understood. So if you are of Jewish ancestry, great. But if you're trying to immigrate, you got to deal with that. If you're not worrying about immigration, no problem. But if both sides of your family are Jewish or have Jewish ancestry, that's fine. Then you're Jewish, no problem. Because both sides means your mother. Welcome home. Okay.
Hold on.
I read lips, but not from this distance. Okay.
Okay, well, I have a similar situation, except my dad was Jewish and my mom was Catholic, a Gentile. And so we're in this interesting situation where having a Jewish last name, like Kadosh, you can imagine, the Gentiles consider you Jewish, but
Jews don't consider you Jewish.
Jews don't, and my dad would say, well, it doesn't matter because you'd still be sent to a concentration, you would have been sent to a concentration camp during the war. So it's like you get all the disadvantages and none of the benefits, if you can.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, we don't let the Germans decide who we are. It's like we decide who we are. But as I said, if you followed Reform Judaism, if you were raised Jewish, they would say you're Jewish. Usually, we have conversion for that too. And what they'll do is, if somebody is not halakhically Jewish, in other words, not through the mother, but through the father, they'll do a very, like a quickie conversion. It'll be very easy. You don't do all the immense studying and everything else because they're basically rubber stamping and kosherizing you. So they do that if the father is Jewish, but not the mother. They did it the same when they brought the Falashas into Israel. They didn't have any real evidence, proof of anything that they were Jewish, but they accepted them in as converts. And it would be more like that, even though your father was Jewish. So, and at that point, it's up to you what you want to identify as. Again, it's not my job to identify you for who you are. That's your right and privilege. I don't let people identify me as who I am either. None of their business. Okay, I don't know if that answered your question, but. Yeah. It's purely up to you. Other question?
Rabbi?
Yeah.
I don't want to tactfully try to handle this situation. It seems like in our movement, you know, and even in the discussion here, not discrediting what they're saying at all, but it seems like there's always us that are Gentiles that are always kind of like, well, you know, I'm 1/5, or you know, my great grandma twice removed or whatever was Jewish or whatever. Could you speak a little bit to Gentiles' place in the kingdom, and you know, that's an okay place too?
Yeah. You heard me on the cup of coffee. That's for the people who have a great uncle or something, or they married somebody who was Jewish and that makes them Jewish. You know, it's like I said, conversion is partially a Jewish response to bring people in. It's not to be negative, but positive. It's simply saying there's a way in if you want to be in. But we're not pushing it. It's up to each individual to decide what they want to be and how they want to go about it. As far as Gentiles in the movement, there are different kinds. Just like Jews, there are all kinds of people. There are Gentiles who are really called to help be part of it, to help the Jewish movement, Jewish people, develop and grow. They are called to be part of it. They're a blessing. They help out in any way that they can. And they're not looking to be in a certain place, one or the other. There are other people who come who sit there and then they decide they want equal rights. And by that, not that there aren't equal rights. I mean, there are. But I mean, people who will say, well, the congregation's half Gentile. Why can't we have a Christmas tree? You know, something like that. Or why do we have to? You know, why can't we bring pork to the potluck? People who don't want to follow it, or they go, well, how come you won't call Gentiles to the Torah, only Jews? How come you do bar mitzvahs for Jewish kids but not for Gentiles who are part of it? And when people have an attitude where they're looking, you know, then why are you here? I have to ask that. If you're not there to support the Jewish people, it's for yourself. And the part of the congregation I was in Connecticut, we were very sensitive to that because we'd have a lot of Gentiles who'd come in and go, oh, this is the true way to worship, and all the other ways are wrong, and we reject the church. And they made coming to a Messianic congregation like giving the church the finger because, they're saying, this is the real way, and you guys are a bunch of phonies. We're not here to say this is the true way to worship, because this is not the first century, and we're not genuine first century worship. We're 21st century, and we reflect the 21st century Jewish world, not the first century. And we're here to express Jewishness because it's who we are, not to be more correct than churches. Churches are not incorrect in what they do. They are not obligated to follow the Torah in all its ways. There are some things, yes, and they do follow some of it. But I don't think it's right to enforce that on people who aren't. But if you're only here to say, this is the right way to worship, then you're not really helping the movement. You're not really helping the Jewish people. It's like, you're entitled to be a member with all the benefits of membership. I don't think that's a problem. But you don't step on the Jewish people to get where you want to be. And in some cases, there have been some problems. I interviewed a lot of Messianic second generations who don't attend Messianic congregations. And I asked them, why are you not here? Why don't you attend? And the answer I got most was the same. Because we were told that being Jewish was special. And yet we would go to the service and we see Gentiles putting on tallits, Gentiles doing everything that we do. There was nothing special about being Jewish. So we stopped going. In other words, by trying to have equal rights, they put a wedge between Jewish young people and the congregation. And that is wrong. I'm all for equal rights. I'm for women's rights too, for that matter. But if you don't like that, too bad. But I don't want to see Jewish children separated from their heritage, because then we're not passing it on if they're walking away. And if the reason they're walking away is because there's nothing left that's special for them. And I don't think that's right. So how do you reconcile it? I really don't know. I'm the Flexodox guy. But really, I think people need to be sensitive to each other. If I go to a congregation and I'm demanding equal rights, or I'm demanding what I want, then I'm not there serving. If I'm there serving, I'm not looking for what I want. I'm looking for what's good for everybody. And so I'd have to ask people, what is your motivation? Why do you want to be here? As I said, in our congregation in Connecticut, we had people come who were not Jewish, but they felt this was the true way to worship. And our response was, it's not the true way. There isn't a true way to worship. There isn't one Jewish way to worship. We have Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, we have Reconstructionists, we have a lot of different groups. We have humanists. We have all kinds of different Jewish approaches to worship, all under the umbrella of Judaism. So there isn't one right way. There's no Jewish pope. No one there, if there was, it would be me. But we don't have one. And so there are a lot of different views, and that's acceptable. But whatever it is, if you're not Jewish and you're in a Messianic congregation, you should be trying to help bolster the Jewish people in it, because we need to be. This is a fragile movement. And if instead we are all Gentiles, it becomes a problem of testimony sometimes. In the 1970s, if I told Jewish people I was a believer in Yeshua, they would go, oh, Jews for Jesus. And I have to explain, no, I'm a Messianic Jew. I'm not Jews for Jesus. That's a mission organization. And then in the 80s and 90s, Messianic congregations, which were originally congregations of Jewish believers trying to worship Yeshua in a Jewish way. That was the original vision. It changed in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s, to Jews and Gentiles worshiping together, because at the time we were about 50-50 in attendance. Then later, it became one new man, neither Jew nor Gentile. You know what the problem I have with one new man is? The one new man is never a Jewish man. It never comes out Jewish. Why is that important? Because if I'm trying to reach Jewish people, if I want Jewish people to see me as Jewish and accept, where I'm coming from, they need to understand that I'm Jewish. But if I'm like some amorphous, neither Jew nor Gentile person, then what am I? And they won't understand it. But what they will understand is whatever I turned into wasn't a Jewish thing. And if I'm trying to communicate Yeshua is the Jewish Messiah, you would naturally assume he would make you more Jewish, not less Jewish. So what are we presenting to people? Now understand, when I say this, I am not against Gentiles in Messianic congregations. Not at all. You remember that pastoral gift I said? I feel the same way about Gentiles as I do about Jews. I want to help all of you because I care. But having said that, People are not all the same. Men and women aren't the same. Have you noticed? Just sort of argue with people. I have a wonderful wife, but we have some real doozy of arguments. But it's one of the things I like. But the thing is, we're different. And there are differences. It's not a better than difference, just a different difference. I don't think women are worse than men or better than men. Sorry, ladies. Sorry, guys. We're just different, but we're all good. And I like having women in my life. I like having men in my life. I mean that in a very moral sense. But anyway, have I answered your question? I've danced around it quite a bit, haven't I? Okay.
I think you answered several questions. I think we're coming up on an hour and a half. And Gustavo, you had a question, right? So, but let's think about, unless you want to keep going, Rabbi, we can go
I'm okay.
till the sun goes down. But might be a good stopping point here soon.
Okay. The question is based because you was talking about the kosher laws and all these laws, but you was focused more in the 613 commandments. The question is how you view the commandments in the New Testament and the Messianic.
Whatever we have in the New Testament has to agree with the Torah. The Torah came first. And God doesn't contradict himself, and he doesn't change his mind. So if it doesn't, however you interpret the New Testament, it has to fully coincide with the Torah. Everything has to, because it is the word of God handed to Moses at Sinai. So everything else has to fall in place with it. Everything Yeshua did fell in place with it. So, I've heard people have some really crappy theology. God gave the Torah to prove that it couldn't be followed. That means God's a sadist. It's like taking your kid and making them do something they can't do. And they walk away feeling defeated. You think that's what God did? He said, this is near to you. It's easy. You can follow this. He gave it to make their lives better, not worse. So, however, it's really Christian theology that interprets it that way. Because like I said, people who don't want to follow the Torah are lazy. They don't want to learn to do it. It's easier to criticize it.
Okay. For example, I hear that we had to have a Bible study, but or Torah study in our own. Do we just can read the Bible in our own, or the Old Testament in our own, or we have more books complement the study, or how is it? How you can explain?
I'd say you read the Bible. It's good to read it yourself, but it's also good to sit with other people, and that's why you have a Bible study. You get to hear other people's understanding of what they think it means, and it can give you a new perspective. So it's valuable for that. But other books, yeah, you can read other books. You should be reading other books. It's not reading only the Bible. I think the Bible's super important, more than any other book, but it's not the only book. When the Talmud, all it does is talk about the Bible and how to apply it. It's not a different Bible. And it's not there to give you answers in the same way. It's there to train you to think. In fact, the Talmud means the student. It's there to teach you. And again, it doesn't the Bible tells you what and why. The Talmud tells you how. It's like if the Bible commands you to tie your shoelaces, okay, but how do I tie them? Do I tie them in a knot? Do I tie them in a bow? Do I do a zigzag? Or, the Talmud simply will tell you how to do that. But it'll give you the explanation. Whereas the Bible tells you what to do. You need to tie your shoes. That's the Bible command, or similar. The Talmud is more like, this is how you do it. Make a square knot, left over right, right over left. You know, make a nice bow, maybe double knotted if it tends to come loose. You know, however, but it has a different function. And from studying it, you learn, like I said, you learn about a lot of other different things. But in studying it, it teaches you how to reason and how to come to a right conclusion. You know, there are a lot of people who can read the Bible, but they come to totally wrong conclusions from it. I have proof. How many denominations are there? How many of the cults that read the Bible? You know, you got Jehovah's Witnesses, you got, you know, some of these others, like Mormons, you got all these different groups. And they're not right, but they all read the Bible. It's not just reading it, it's understanding it. How do I come to a right understanding? That's part of what the Talmud does. How do I understand this? How do I apply this? And it applies to a lot of things in life. How do I approach problems, solutions, to come across a good solution? That's the function of the Talmud. The function of the Bible is to tell me where we came from, and that God is there and wants us to live in a certain way, and that he loves us. That's what the Bible's for. And you read it over and over, and you keep getting that message. God loves us. He wants us to fear him, love him, follow him, and help others. You know, you've heard the thing, you know, sum up the Torah in one word, in one sentence. Hillel said, what is distasteful to you, do not do to others. The rest is commentary. Go and study. So that was the beginning of the Talmud. Mm-hmm.
The golden rule, yeah. Well, do we want to cut things off, or?
I'm okay. I'll go as long as you want.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time, and
if you want to cut it short, that's fine.
Okay.
However, understand when I go to Europe and I'm teaching, I'll sit for 5 hours. We're not going to sit for 5 hours, don't worry.
Right.
I got this nervous look from people. So, but, if you want to continue, fine. If you want to end it, fine. I'm good.
Does anyone have a question that they can't leave here today without having the rabbi answer? Maybe, Garrett, you have one?
Are you saying you're not going to leave if I don't answer?
Yeah, I think we want to be sensitive. We want to thank you for your time today and just pouring out on us. We just appreciate everything you've done for us today, and want to invite everybody to come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll be unrolling the scroll, as it were, and having the right rabbi take a look at our Torah scroll and impart some more wisdom on us probably along the way. Telling us as much as he can about the origins of our Torah scroll, possibly, and it'll be a good time. A meal afterwards, only if you bring a dish. So anyway, thank you for everyone coming out this evening. Thank you, Rabbi, for your time today, sir.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed being with you guys today.
When you come back again?
You have to ask him.
But he's all about the money, and we might have to wait for a little while before we bring him back. No.
I would be about the money. It's not. I don't get to have any of it. I have to give it away.
Yeah. No.
That's the best part about it.
I was just vamping on what you said in your message.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we do appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for attendance today, and you are free to move about the country. Thank you all. But come back tomorrow and see what's going on at 10 a.m. Love you all. Shavua Tov.
Thanks, everyone.